Coming up in today's newscast, human rights NGO Betselem releases footage of the moment a Palestinian is shot in the head, and it seems to completely contradict the IDF. Another Israeli woman is murdered in a case of domestic violence, bringing this year's tally to 25 and sparking renewed protests across the country, and the investigation into a group of drowned Israeli teens is completed. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that the international community and UNIFIL must play a greater role in putting an end to Hezbollah's terrorist activities. The Prime Minister made these comments this morning during a meeting with Italian Deputy Premier and Interior Minister Matteo Salvini, who recently arrived for a visit. And Netanyahu first praised Salvini as a great friend of Israel, but then told him, quote, "You had the opportunity yesterday to see the terror tunnels for yourself," adding, "This is a clear act of aggression by Hezbollah against us and against the norms of the international community." Netanyahu then also noted that the head of UNIFIL is Italian, and Israel believes that UNIFIL needs to, quote, "fulfill a stronger and more decisive role, but in the end it is the responsibility of the international community." Still, UNIFIL should prevent Hezbollah from taking aggressive actions against Israel. Prime Minister and Defense Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited northern Israel yesterday in the wake of the ongoing IDF Operation Northern Shield, and while there he said that Hezbollah would be making a major mistake should it decide to attack the IDF or resist the army's operation to uncover and destroy their terror tunnels. He added that Hezbollah would, quote, "be dealt unimaginable blows," end quote. The Prime Minister was speaking at a security assessment meeting together with IDF Chief of Staff Lieutenant General Gadi Eisenkot, Northern Command Head Major General Yoav Strik, and other senior officers, and he met with soldiers serving along the border as well as with the heads of local authorities in the north too. At the meeting, Netanyahu explained further that uncovering the third Hezbollah attack tunnel this week was part of the process of, quote, "systematically dismantling these tunnel weapons." And additionally, he praised the spirit of the commanders and fighters, saying, quote, "Hezbollah thought that it could dig unhindered. We knew, we planned, and it did not leak," end quote. Finally, Netanyahu also lauded the operation for proceeding at a very good pace, if not even ahead of schedule. And then he revealed that an IDF delegation will be leaving for Moscow to discuss the operation further with President Putin. The delegation will brief the Russian president as per agreements over the region, but Netanyahu reiterated that no matter what, Israel intends to maintain its right to act against an Iranian military and Hezbollah entrenchment in Syria. In related news, according to Israeli daily Haaretz, the United States just reportedly denied an Israeli request to place sanctions on Lebanon, citing its strategic ties with Beirut. Netanyahu made the request during his meeting with United States Secretary of State Mike Pompeo in Brussels nearly 2 weeks ago. However, according to the report, Pompeo has so far only agreed to increase measures against Hezbollah alone. Newly discovered footage purportedly showing 22-year-old Palestinian Mohammed Habali being shot in the head from behind last week was released yesterday by human rights group Betselem, and it appears to completely contradict initial IDF accounts. Habali, who is both mentally and physically disabled, suffered a bullet wound to the head in December in the West Bank town of Tulkarem, and he was later pronounced dead upon arrival at the hospital. Now, initially, the IDF reported that Habali was killed during a violent riot in which live fire was used to disperse the rock-throwing crowd. But the new CCTV footage gathered and released by Betselem shows from 4 different angles the moment Habali falls to the ground, and there is no such riot in the video. In fact, the area appears to be fairly calm, with just a few Palestinians walking casually around. Suddenly, the people on the street scatter, but Habali, who uses a walking stick, couldn't move in time and was shot from behind. Later, 3 soldiers are seen leaving the area without offering any medical assistance. The IDF has since restated their story that the soldiers in the area were responding to a disturbance in the area in which Habali was caught in unintentionally. The army has also stated that its investigation is ongoing, however, and that when it is complete, the military prosecution will examine the evidence. But Betselem again pressed the IDF in their statement accompanying the video, saying that the army only responded when the killing was made public, and that contrary to the army's statement, quote, "the soldiers are seen walking unhurriedly, the Palestinians are seen talking amongst themselves, and then the soldiers fatally shot Habali in the head from a considerable distance. The lethal shooting was not preceded by a warning, was not justified, and constitutes a violation of the law," end quote. Joining me now with more on Betselem's recently published and shocking footage of a man being shot in the West Bank is ILTV's Lidar Gavelazi. And Lidar, what do you make of this?
Thanks, Aaron. So in watching the disturbing footage, it indeed does not look so good for the IDF, but the military has ordered a criminal investigation into the incident and is still sticking to its story that there was a public disturbance where Palestinians threw stones at the IDF forces and soldiers were forced to respond with live fire.
Okay, but in looking at the footage, again, you don't really see any disturbances. So how is it that the military is still sticking to this story?
Well, in past instances of incidents with similar circumstances where footage has been released, the IDF has argued that the footage didn't necessarily show the whole picture. For example, perhaps there was a threat earlier that failed to appear in the footage. Other times, investigations have found that soldiers were aiming for the knees or another person entirely and simply missed or misfired. It's not clear what the IDF investigation will uncover in this case, but Betselem, as we know, has already criticized the IDF's investigation, saying that it doubts it will lead to any real action.
All right, well, Betselem is obviously critical of the IDF. It's practically part of their mantra. And they've consistently said that most IDF investigations into shootings of Palestinians fail to lead to any jail time.
Yes, but of course, they're conveniently forgetting, for example, the Hebron shooter, Elor Azaria, who was convicted for shooting a Palestinian terrorist while he was handcuffed on the ground. I'm not sure, we can jump to any conclusions or draw any parallels with this incident just yet, though.
Yeah, and Elor Azaria's jail time was also very contentious, being that he barely served any time, considering the charges against him.
True, and I'm glad you brought that up because actually, yes, this definitely is a blow to the IDF and Israel's image. Betselem is consistently attacking the IDF and the Israeli government internationally. Its rhetoric and accusations often grant legitimacy to BDS, and this incident provides them with more fuel. This comes just 2 days after Betselem was honored in Paris by the French Human Rights Awards.
All right, well, which I understand, that was also mired in controversy because they were awarded alongside Al-Haq, which has ties to terror and supports the BDS movement.
Yes, the French Justice Minister actually backed out of the ceremony too after Jewish groups and the Israeli government pressured France to drop the event altogether. But again, they discredit themselves by standing with organizations connected to terrorism. And then the next day, they released this video, which, accurate or not, provides them with international legitimacy.
All right, well, I guess all we can do now is wait and see what the IDF investigation yields and then talk about this some more. Until then, Lidar Gavelazi, thank you for coming in.
Thank you, Aaron.
It's been over a year since his performances in Israel, and Australian musician Nick Cave of Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds is still being asked to defend his choice against the global BDS movement. When a fan asked on his Red Hand Files website that he thought about what he thought about Brian Eno's stance on Israel, Cave responded by sharing his actual correspondence with Eno in the weeks before the concert. Now, I won't read the whole thing here, but Cave essentially explains that he believes music is meant to bring people together, and he also argues that it would be far more effective as a means of protest if musicians came to Israel in spite of their feelings, as long as they made clear that their presence was for the fans only. I urge you all to check out the full letter at www.theredhandfiles.com, but joining me now with more is attorney, public diplomacy expert, and lecturer, Ran Bar Yoshafat. Ran, welcome.
Thank you very much. Very happy to be here.
It's my pleasure to have you once again. So, let's just jump into this. What are your initial thoughts about Nick Cave's writing and how that reflects on BDS as a whole?
Well, I have to say I would call him a big mensch. I don't really agree with his politics. In case you don't know, Nick Cave is very critical about the Israeli government. However, basically what he's saying is that if you're not allowing a musician to perform because you disagree with a certain policy of a certain government, you're basically bullying the person. He's not saying that he's supporting this policy or the other. He's wanting to give his music to the Israeli people. There's nothing wrong about that. Can you imagine if Syria would invite him, if Afghanistan would invite him, if any other country, they'll say, hey, that's a great opportunity to, exactly what he said, to bring people closer together. Music and art in general is not supposed to be political in the sense, of course it's political in its message, but it's supposed to be political in its message, but it's not supposed to say, well, I'm only serving a certain group of people. Furthermore, can you imagine if the Palestinian Authority would invite him and then the same, you call it the BDS, I call it the Movement to Destroy Israel, how would they react if he was invited to give a performance in Ramallah? Okay, they would say, yeah, of course we're supportive of this. The Palestinian Authority sends a person to a death sentence if he sells his house to a Jew. If he was invited to give a performance in Gaza, which is under Hamas, a terrorist organization, they would say, oh yeah, great, do that. So it's like they're singling out Israel as the only democratic country in the world, in Israel, in the Middle East, and they're not allowing him to perform here.
But to play devil's advocate, Israel has an anti-BDS law currently in place that bars people who support the BDS movement or who may support the BDS movement from even entering the country. So, taking Nick Cave's advice to come here despite their negative feelings about the government, would they even be allowed to?
So we have to understand what does it mean, again, BDS, what I call the movement to destroy Israel. If you're saying I disagree with a certain policy, well, hey, guess what? You're in Israel, you're like any other Israeli who doesn't agree with the current government, because every Israeli has a different opinion. It can be more right-wing, more left-wing, that's fine. You don't have any certain Israeli that's 100% in coherence with the government's saying. However, the people who are trying to vilify Israel and saying Israel doesn't have any right to exist on any border, of course they should not be allowed to come here, just like any other country in the world. If a person is saying, I'm critical about a certain policy that you have in France, Ireland, Spain, that's one thing. To say, I don't want that country to exist, that's a whole different issue. And that's what the movement to destroy Israel, aka BDS movement, is saying, which is why I appreciate what Kev is saying. Just come here, play your music, and put politics aside.
All right. With that, I think that's a good time to end it. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you very much.
All right, just a week after Israelis held a nationwide strike to protest domestic violence against women, organizers of the strike are today calling to renew demonstrations following the murder of yet another woman. Iman Ahmed Awad was stabbed to death in her home in the northern city of Acre on Tuesday, and police have opened an investigation into the circumstances leading to Awad's death, so far detaining her husband for questioning. But Awad's death brings the total number of women and girls murdered in Israel this past year alone to 25, marking a dramatic increase in domestic violence over previous years. And organizers of last week's protest are now again calling on all Israeli women and their allies to go on strike every day from now on for 25 minutes until the government implements its plan to combat domestic violence. The Secondary School Teachers Association has already announced it will join the protest, and high school teachers are set to strike during classes for 25 minutes beginning today. Now, the government also did take notice of the nationwide protests last week, which culminated in a massive rally with the participation of tens of thousands in Tel Aviv's Rabin Square. And the following morning, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu chaired a meeting of the Ministerial Committee on Violence Against Women, where in his opening remarks he equated violence against women with terrorism, saying that the government needs to help women victims of violence while at the same time giving a, quote, punch in the face, end quote, to abusive husbands. Netanyahu also vowed to take the issue seriously, saying there is a lot of work to be done. Well, he couldn't be more right this morning, as Israelis again plan to take to the streets. And only time will tell if the government is willing to actually put the money where its mouth is. Now, following up on this topic of domestic violence against women in Israel, the Knesset approved on Monday an amendment that enables sexual assault victims to speak out and tell their stories in the media without the permission of a court. LTV's Joy Gavijon is here with more.
Thanks, Aaron. So let me tell you that this is big and very, very important, because this new amendment comes to the law comes to attack one crucial factor in the cycle of violence against women. Until yesterday, victims of sexual assault could be punished with up to 1 year in jail just for the fact of speaking out. So imagine, before, victims, and again, victims of sexual assault could be turned into criminals only for telling their story to the world.
It's a double punishment.
Exactly. And we have to remember that getting out there and making abuse stories public for some victims is a way to recover and to try to overcome this horrible thing that happened to them. But more importantly, it's a way to empower other victims that are in the dark, that are afraid, and it's an inspiration for many to step up and report the abuse and whoever is committing this horrific crime.
All right, so wait, so until now, according to the Penal Code, in order to expose details, a judge had to approve it first by signing a victim's letter of consent.
Right. But now, after this change, the victims, they will still have to sign a letter of consent, but it won't need to pass by a judge for approval. So it will be easier and faster and avoiding this bureaucracy, you know?
And this bill passed its third reading without any abstentions or oppositions, right?
Yes, with 62 votes in favor, actually. And the person behind this change was Justice Minister Ayelet Shaked, who expressed that those who need to hide are the criminals and not the victims. And Alisa Lavier from the Kulanu party was also involved with several Knesset members who submitted different bills. And she said, quote, each victim opens the door to the next, brings the issue to the fore, and takes another step, an important step towards rectifying society, unquote.
All right, well, I think that's a good time to end this on. And I'm happy something is being done to help give people a voice.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joy.
Of course.
The manhunt for the perpetrators of Sunday night's shooting in Ofra continues today, with roadblocks and additional security services flooding into the West Bank to gather intelligence. And the objective is to find the terrorist and his accomplice, who is believed to have been driving the car from which shots were fired. And Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was quoted saying that we will not rest until we find these murderous criminals. 7 Israelis were injured during the shooting at an Ofra bus stop, amongst them a 21-year-old pregnant woman, who was shot in the abdomen and as a result had to deliver her baby at week 30. Thankfully, though, the mother is recovering after spending a few days in an induced coma and was just reunited with her husband, who was also injured during the attack. Unfortunately, their baby, however, is still in critical condition. Now, to make matters worse, this all comes parallel to the also ongoing manhunt for terrorist Ashraf Na'alawa, who murdered 2 people 2 months ago in the Balkan Industrial Park. But IDF and security forces are gathering every piece of field intelligence that can bring them closer to the perpetrators, and Israeli forces are also working closely with Palestinian authorities. Further, Israeli officials ask for patience from the public as they conduct these complicated searches. According to Dani Atom, the former head of Israel's Mossad spy agency, he said, quote, "Even if a perpetrator can sometimes be on the loose for a while, the operation continues until the end because the terrorist is always exposed," end quote. Former Israel Police Chief Shlomo Aronishki has finally presented the report examining the operations of government ministries and pre-military academies following the Tzafit flood disaster, which killed 10 high school teens in April. The young boys and girls who were part of the Bnei Tzion pre-military academy went on a field trip to the Tzafit stream when a flash flood hit, and the new report heavily criticized both the government and the academies for allowing the situation to occur. Regarding the academies, it said they were not concerned with safety, and the instructors are inexperienced, and each academy works according to its own rules as it sees fit. Regarding the government, the report stated that it did not oversee the academies, specifically criticizing the Education Ministry, which it said, quote, refrains from supervising, instructing, or limiting the academies in the area of field activity, end quote. It then added that there was only 1 full-time employee and 2 part-time employees responsible for oversight at some 54 pre-military academies. Finally, the report also criticized the Defense Ministry as well, saying that it too did not provide any oversight or assistance in training youth for the IDF. But despite the report, the pre-military academies currently still have no obligation to implement its findings and recommendations, and to date, the government has not passed any legislation that would require oversight of field trips either. Now, if you're looking for a job, any job, temp or full-time, Tigbur is a name you want to remember. The Israeli company works in recruitment and placement across practically every sector on the market, and here to tell us all about it is Tigbur's CEO, Orit Benvenisti. Orit, it's a pleasure to have you, and thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
All right, so tell me a little bit about Tigbur. You know, how did it start? How did it begin?
Okay, it started 40 years ago. We're one of the oldest company in Israel. Think about it, Israel is only 70 years.
Sure.
So, and my mother opened it 40 years ago. It was her idea. She brought it from the States. She was working in a company like that in the United States. And then we opened, I'm the 2nd generation. And another thing that now the Tigbur is on the Israeli Stock Exchange. We're one of the biggest company in Israel. And we have a union contract with the union. And we are one of the biggest companies.
So okay, so you're placing people from everything from high tech to retail and what else?
We have 3 divisions. One of that is recruitment and temporary. Okay. High tech, banks, pensions company, industrial company. You can think about most of the company in Israel, they're taking services from Tigbur. The 2nd division is home care, caregivers, nursing care. We're working with hospitals. And we're working with the Social Security over here in Israel with the elderly and the disability. That's the 2nd division. And the 3rd division, that over there, I'm really proud. I'm the only chairwoman of one of the biggest security and defense company in Israel named Reshef. And over there, we recruit security guards. So think about it. There is all of the projects over here in Israel. Tigbur is in this way involved.
So basically every time I walk into a business, I can be sure that at least one employee there works for you.
I'm sure about it. And if they're not working today, they will work in the future. They will work with Tigbur.
Incredible. All right, so how do people get in touch with Tigbur if they want to, A, be placed maybe by you, or B, if they're looking to get placements from you?
So in a way, it's like that. First, everybody nowadays, they went inside our website. That's one thing. Another thing, we really have a name that it's for 40 years, so a lot of the clients are giving us a call. Sure. The 3rd, with the government, there is a lot of bids. So this way, it's another way to have the clients. And it's funny to say that when I'm looking, and I'm a lot of years in Tigbur, that the parents are bringing their kids.
It already has that kind of...
They have this name. And you can find us on Facebook, you can find us on LinkedIn, you can find us in the website. So it's really, really easy. And think about it, we have 40 branches all over Israel. So when you think about it from...
Are you, I'm sorry to interrupt, are you outside of Israel too, or really you're focused in the Israeli market?
The only place that we are outside of Israel, it's Turkey. We went inside like 7-8 years ago. That's the only place. It's a big issue.
All right, well, it sounds like you guys are doing amazing work.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, and putting Israelis to work. I love it. So, Orit, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
All right, excavations at the Tzipori National Park have now revealed a public bath that archaeologists believe was used in the 2nd and 3rd century by Rabbi Judah Hanassi, who was a famous Jewish leader and scholar. And in fact, in the Megillah of the Babylonian Talmud, it is written that Hanassi bathed in these types of baths. And in addition to finding the bathing pools, on the floor of the bath was a rare bronze figurine of a bull. It's believed that the bull comes from the Roman era, and that at the time, a token like this placed at the bottom of the bath could bring with it rain and prosperity. Though the director of the archaeology department at the Nature and Parks Authority, Tzvika Tzuk, said he believes the pool dates back to the early 3rd century and that it may have been built by Jews. Further, considering the time frame and the size and style of the staircase that was revealed, it's highly likely that this bath was specifically the one described in the story of Rabbi Judah Hanassi. But what about the bull? Is it Roman as first thought? Well, Tzuk says, quote, the bull appears often in the Jewish religion, end quote, and that at the time, the area was pluralistic and still held symbols of the Romans. Though he also mentions that it's not entirely impossible that this pagan artifact was simply inserted into the pool by Romans later, and or that the Romans may have actually been the ones to build the bath too. Tzuk says, quote, we didn't expect to find such a thing. The architecture is more important, but the bull is more exciting, end quote. Well, whatever it is, as of now there are plans to turn the historic bath back into a swimming pool, and for those who already want to visit Tzipori, they can still go and see this and other outstanding archaeological treasures. With Hanukkah having just ended, ILTV's Emmanuel Kadosh has made a top 5 list this week of the best viral videos to have come out to celebrate the Jewish holiday. But before she shares her list with us tomorrow, she's here in the studio today to tell us about one video in particular that really stood out from the rest. Emmanuel?
Yes, well, like you said, tomorrow you guys will be seeing the most buzzworthy top 5 viral videos that came out to celebrate Hanukkah. But this one in particular actually came from our homeland, so, you have to kind of give a shout out to it. It came from the mechanical engineering students at the Technion Institute of Technology in Haifa. But I'm not going to spoil it. I just kind of want you guys to take a look at a really short clip.
Okay, let's see it. All right, so I think we just saw the end of that,
Yes.
but it...
So this is basically a Rube Goldberg,
machine.
Yeah,
yes,
machine.
A Rube Goldberg machine.
It's amazing. It's basically the hardest way possible to light menorah candles on Hanukkah.
It's the most complicated, useless way.
Yes. Useless but entertaining and fun,
So it serves a purpose.
Yes,
then.
it does serve a purpose. Everybody saw it, across the world people were seeing this video. They thought it was a cool, interactive, and definitely, watch-worthy video of how to light the menorah candles.
Definitely, I love Rube Goldberg machines.
Yes.
I think we've seen there's a band, OK Go, which
Yes.
I absolutely love, and they actually make. They've done a few things.
They've
with
done
Rube
a few.
Goldberg-esque.
Yes, they've done Rube Goldberg-esque type music videos. OK Go has a variety of different videos to show where they kind of have, they have a play on their version of the Rube Goldberg machine, which garnered millions and millions of views on their videos. And basically, for those who don't know what a Rube Goldberg machine is, it's the most complicated way of doing the simplest task in the world, like lighting a menorah.
Like lighting a menorah.
Yep.
All right, well, I'll keep using my hands for now.
And I will show you guys tomorrow the top 5 most buzzworthy viral videos.
We'll see you tomorrow for the top 5. Thank you, Emmanuel.
Thank you.
And now for our Hebrew word of the day. Given that an excavation in Tzipori Park just revealed a figurine of a bull at the bottom of a pool, our word of the day is shor, meaning bull. Now, if you believe in horoscopes and you were born between April 20th and May 21st, then you are a Taurus and your sign is a shor, or a bull. A bull, by the way, in case you aren't familiar, is the male cow. The female counterpart of the bull, or shor, would then be a para. And finally, a fun fact about shorim, or bulls, is that counter to the popular idiom, if you put a shor in a china shop, it probably won't break much of anything. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight should be cloudy and with a chance of showers. The low should be around 60 or 16 degrees Celsius. Then tomorrow you can expect partly cloudy skies and a drop in temperatures to a high of about 66 or 19 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.75 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv, and don't forget to follow us on Facebook at Israel English News and on Twitter at ILTV News. I'm Aaron Porras. Thank you for watching.